Hello, everyone. Vasivada Party Charlie O here for the Make the Money and Run podcast for January 6th, 2022. How you doing, everybody out there in Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube? Thanks to everybody at the Britannia Arms of Capitola and Cupertino for sponsoring us. We're here 2 times a week for the time being, Thursdays and Fridays at 1 Eastern, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter Live. Download and subscribe if you missed any of the live broadcasts. I keep getting emails and saying we're on that different podcasting outlets now, so check it out. Anywhere you see the logo, you can find us and download and subscribe to us. We've had some good guests on. We've had some really good shows talking about sports and sports wagering. Speaking of that, don't forget SuperDraft Pro is our new partner. Download the app or log in at superdraftpro.com/VPartySports. The best way to do daily fantasy and fantasy football. Also, if you're in a state that's legally wagering, you can wager on games as well, too. Hey, Charlie O, how are you today?
Well, listen, I can tell you how I am. I did not buy the winning Powerball ticket in Sacramento that won $315 million.
Oh, is that where the ticket came out of Sacramento?
In Sacramento.
Oh.
If I had, I would not be here today.
If you had, I would have called you about 100 times going, hey, what's going on here? Anyway, it's a big day for us as well, too. So, happy anniversary, Charlie O.
Thank you very much. Being right back at you. I can't believe that it's been 3 years, but it has. I have more gray hair to prove that. But congratulations, my friend. We weren't sure we were going to make it 3 weeks, especially after COVID hit. But 3 years, and here we are.
No doubt. 2 years, going into our third year right now. We started in 2020. Right before the wild card weekend, and then all of a sudden COVID hit when I was in Las Vegas doing the Pac-12 tournament. We know how that turned out. It didn't go back until August. We made stuff up. By the way, Casey Freelove, I know you're probably download, subscribe anywhere you have. Casey, happy anniversary to you too. You're a big part of this. You're the part of the reason that I got this thing going in the first place. Knowing how other shows were, and we don't like to trash other shows, but every once in a while when they come back at us, I'll be more than happy to trash you. Don't worry about that. Just keep your ears open just in case. In case your ears are burning, they probably are. Anyway, 2 times a week, Thursdays and Fridays, 1 Eastern. If you miss it, you can download and subscribe to Britannia Arms of Capitola. 10 years on the shores of the Pacific Ocean, located in Capitola Village. Facebook.com/Britannia Arms Capitola. 831-464-2583. And, of course, the original, the Britannia Arms of Cupertino in Silicon Valley on the border of Cupertino and San Jose. Come enjoy the best British pub and restaurant, Britannia Arms Deanza.com, 408-252-7262. They're back. They feature the NFL Sunday Ticket. This is the last weekend of the NFL Sunday Ticket. I don't know if you noticed my pages or not, Charlie, everybody out there noticing my social media pages. I've got a lot of photos of Capitola in the last month.
No. Every time I open up Facebook, I see you sitting on the seawall going, hey, I'm by the ocean.
I can't help it. You can't take the ocean out of me. You can't take the beach out of me.
I think you're working for the Chamber of Commerce of Capitola.
I should. And Monterey for that matter, too, because I was in Monterey on New Year's Day, and what a beautiful day it was that day as well, too. But anyway, like I said, it's been a good December. Coming back out of COVID, coming in the new year. I start college basketball tonight for FS1. USC is visiting Cal, assuming that game's going to go off. USC Stanford already postponed this weekend. We'll get to some of the college basketball in a little bit as well, too. But, yes, I can't think of a better place to go spend Sunday Ticket than the Britannia Arms of Cupertino or Capitola. This is the last regular season weekend of the NFL for those of you that missed the earlier special show. Go ahead.
But, Vasu, the last week of the regular season, but the first time we've ever had week 18.
Correct.
So it's the last but the first. So this will be very interesting.
Actually, you know what? I hate to disagree with my partner, but I believe we've had week 18s before because in the beginning when the bye weeks came out, they used to have 2 bye weeks.
Okay, but this is the first week 18 where we've had game 17. Okay, so there we go.
I'm accurate. That's my fault. You know, those of you that
am I right also?
You're also
first
right
week
as well.
18 where we've had week 17. So
two things can be opposite and still be true at the same time. All right, we're kind of off the rails here a little bit. As we said, Make the Money and Run podcast for this Thursday, January 6th, 2022, our anniversary show. Lots of fun to talk about. If you have any comments, questions, anything you want to send to us, you want to tell us to get off the air, do that as well, too. We welcome one and all coming into the podcast. If you missed earlier, live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, you can download and subscribe our show, but you can also download and subscribe to the conversation I had with Fox Sports' Chris Myers. What a great guy. Came on for about a half hour. We're only going to go 15 minutes, and he's getting ready for a Zoom meeting for his game this weekend, his final game this weekend before the playoffs start as well, too. We talked a lot about Fox Sports. We talked about the NFL, the playoff scenarios, the wild card scenarios, and then we talked about John Madden at the end and what a good job Fox did with the All Madden documentary as well as the logo change over the weekend. And I thought it was a really good touch last weekend. All right. That being said, as we finally ramble in our way into this weekend's NFL games, let's start with the NFL. Don't forget, we'll have a Friday football show tomorrow at 1 Eastern, 10 a.m., so we'll get more into detail. But as of last week, we go through the scores of last week. By the way, I didn't add up the week. I think 7-9 for the underdogs last week. The favorites are coming back, trying to get back closer to 500. We had the numbers going into week 17. 125 for the underdogs, 115 for the favorites, which was a lot different than when it was like when it was 30, when there was a 30-game difference. 109 over, 128 under, 3 pushes. And then Thursday Night Football ended up at 10-8 in favor of the underdogs, 7-11 over versus the under on these totals. So a lot of it had to do with COVID, a lot less fans in the stands. Road teams, as Chris Myers said, have come in and basically kind of dominated the galvanized mentality. How have you looked at this first 17 weeks, Charlie, first 16 weeks as we go into you said week 18. These first 17 weeks as we go into week 18, a lot of playoff spots locked up, a lot of scenarios, a lot of crazy scenarios still happening for the wild card this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I know that this new playoff scenario isn't perfect, but it has sure made the entire season interesting. The one thing that we're still not sure about, and I don't think we're going to know until maybe even next year, is what this 17th game is going to do to the health of players. But I have to tell you right now, Vasu, I think that really the COVID knockouts have had more to do than physical knockouts as far as ankles and shoulders and everything else. I mean, we haven't seen really any devastating injuries more than what we would normally see during any other regular season. And thank goodness with the COVID, it's not been the devastating COVIDs that we've seen in the past. This Omicron, unfortunately, is incredibly contagious. The good news is everybody gets over it pretty quickly. So, it's just more than anything else, this COVID right now is annoying.
Yes. It's like a flu in December. It's annoying. I might have had it last week. I had a headache last week, but it was only for a day. So I don't know if that was it or not, but we're still here doing the show. So everything seems to be okay. All right. We get into football now. The standings as we go into it. By the way, 2 Saturday games. If you hadn't seen the Saturday games, the Chiefs and Broncos first, 4:30 Eastern on ABC and ESPN. The second game, the Cowboys and the Eagles, also on ABC, ESPN. Cowboys 11-5, the Eagles 9-7, both have wrapped up playoff spots. The Cowboys 11-5, they've wrapped up the NFC East. The Chiefs game is a big game, and we'll get to that in a second. Actually, we'll get to that right now in the AFC. The Chiefs have a big game this weekend against the Broncos because they are in the number 2 seed after their loss to Cincinnati over the weekend. The Chiefs lose 34-31 on a game-winning kick by Randy Bullock. The Bengals were down by 14 points at one point, ended up 28-17 at the half. But Joe Burrow, boy, I'm telling you, we knew he was good coming in. The injury set him back a little bit last year. But, boy, they turned that on in the second half. Now, he's not going to play this weekend.
Right.
So their chances of moving on to the number 2 or number 1 spot pretty limited. They're going to have the Browns this weekend. No Baker Mayfield this weekend either for the Browns. And no Joe Mixon, it sounds like also. He has COVID protocol that they're going through. But the Kansas City Chiefs are the story right now. Losing that game on Sunday. The Tennessee Titans, by virtue of their head-to-head victory and their win last week over Miami, they have retaken the number 1 spot in the AFC. Tennessee is at Houston, and if you call the Chargers teams up, don't take the Houston Texans lightly based on the last few weeks. If you saw the game against the 49ers, other than the fact that a field goal at the end helped those 49er wagerers and screwed those Texans wagerers because for some reason Kyle Shanahan wanted to kick a field goal at the end of the game. I don't remember very many scenarios where a field goal, a should not have ever covered game for a favorite, ended up being a last-second cover for a favorite, Charlie. But the Titans are at the Texans. The Chiefs, we said, are on Saturday against the Broncos. So the Chiefs, the Titans will know their fate going into Sunday by virtue of the Broncos, who are pretty much decimated by now. And Kansas City, a 10-point favorite going into this weekend at Denver.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Tennessee can't underestimate the Houstons. I see. I was trying to go Texans and Houston.
Texans, I gotcha.
I'm just gonna mix them right up there. Can't underestimate Houston because they're going to be at home, and that's where they've really played tough. But I think Tennessee will be ready to go. I think they're going to ramp up, and everybody's got to remember that Tennessee is looking forward to the fact that Derrick Henry, in theory, is going to be ready to come back during the playoffs. I mean, that's the whole scenario that they've been holding on tightly for during all of these weeks, and have done a magnificent job holding on to the fact that if they can hold on, their big tank of a running back is going to be back and available to go. And, everybody goes, well, what will he do? He's been out for so long. Folks, that guy's going to hit the field, and he is going to mow guys down just like he did when he left. I mean, this guy, I'm telling you, he is a Titan. Oh. Where did that come from?
I don't know. Well, let me. I'm not going to play devil's advocate because I totally agree with you, because he's a bull and he works hard and his conditioning is unbelievable. The injury was a terrible injury, but the fact that Derrick Henry has a possibility of coming back in the playoffs changes game plans of their opposition to the point where they have to game plan for him, and that could even open it up even more for Ryan Tannehill. A.J. Brown has come back from injuries. Julio Jones has been injured all year off and on, but they've got guys. Ferkser, the tight end, has been really good as well, too. And their defense is more physical than I thought they were. Watching them play Miami last week, watching them play the 49ers 2 weeks ago. I'm trying to remember the games during the year that I've seen them play live. The New Orleans game that they had in the middle of the year, they were very physical. This Kevin Byard, their safety, their only Pro Bowl defensive player, surprisingly for the number one seed, is on the roster there. But they're very physical. And they're going to attack the Houston Texans this weekend. And then if they get in the playoffs and have Derrick Henry, even as a decoy, that physical nature, that offensive line and the way that they manhandled Miami over the week, I really thought Miami had a better shot of playing this weekend. They got manhandled by the Tennessee Titans last weekend, and to the tune of 34-3. They got eliminated, and so we won't see any Miami Dolphins. But Tennessee, Kansas City, Cincinnati, Buffalo and New England are tied for the AFC East. They both have their games this weekend. Buffalo will have the Jets this weekend, and the Patriots will go to Miami. And Miami, even though they're eliminated, Miami beat them in week 1. Of course, they proceeded to lose 7 straight to go 1-7 after that. But then they won 7 straight to go 8-7, and then they put themselves in a position to get in, and then they get blown out by the same Titans last weekend. So they're eliminated. I look at the standings, Charlie. The top 4 we just mentioned, Buffalo and New England, they split the season series. The Patriots have a better conference record. If Buffalo loses and New England wins, then New England will win the division because of conference record, because both will be 4-2 in their division. And then, of course, whoever gets that will get the 5th wild card, and whoever gets the division will probably get the 4th wild card seed, unless Cincinnati loses and Buffalo can overtake them. So there's still some speculation as to where the Buffalo Bills will end up this weekend. But knowing Bill Belichick, not knowing Bill Belichick, but knowing of Bill Belichick, he's not taking anybody lightly. The Dolphins got beat them at home in week 1, probably the first time they've lost a home game to open the season in years and years and years. And we thought Miami was going to be off to a good start after that. They've got a chance to really hurt the Patriots this weekend, do the Dolphins. And the Patriots have a chance to be hurt this weekend if they don't watch out.
Yeah, and I think for the Dolphins, the thing that's going to make them dangerous is now that they're out of the playoffs, this is their playoff game. And we know that they have become a really good team. After going 1-7, they're now 7-1 in their last games. So they want to go out with a bang. And what better way to do that than to beat Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots? So, I think the Patriots are going to have a tiger on their hands, if you will, when the Dolphins come in. And I think they're going to have to be ready. Sometimes you go up against a team that's out of the playoffs and you go, okay, we can kind of walk over this game and move on. This is not going to be a walkover game because the Dolphins are going to want to go out with a flourish. They're going to want to go out with their fans going, man, what a great year it was, even though we didn't make the playoffs. So the Pats are going to have a team that's angry and want to go out with a bang.
No doubt about it. The Patriots are a 7-point favorite with the underdog at -120. The total is 40. Buffalo is a 16-point favorite against the Jets and 41 going into this weekend. We saw what Buffalo did against the Falcons last weekend. They could have lost that game, honestly, but Atlanta, they're better than Atlanta, no doubt about it. Atlanta ended up covering the 14.5, barely going into the weekend. All right, let's hit the AFC here. As we said, I'm looking at these standings. We just mentioned the top 5. Indianapolis looks like they'll get in. There's a lot of scenarios for them to not make it. There's not a lot of scenarios for them to not make the playoffs. Basically, they have Jacksonville this weekend, so that should be something that they should be able to get through there and get to 10-7 and be in the number 6 seed. Buffalo or New England will probably be in the number 5 seed, whoever loses this weekend or whoever ends up in the wild card scenario. The Chargers and the Raiders, that's the big game of the weekend. It's going to be Sunday Night Football. It's a win and in situation for the Raiders and the Chargers. Whoever wins will be in. The other team will still have a shot depending on what the Steelers do, depending on what the Ravens do, considering the Ravens had beat let me see if I got this straight here. So I'm looking at this. The Ravens are in 11th place. This is very funny to me. The Ravens are in 11th place in the overall standings, but they're below the Dolphins, who are eliminated, above the rest of the teams who are eliminated. The NFC picture, the 49ers are ahead of the Eagles, but the Eagles are in the playoffs in 7th, but the 49ers are in 6th, and the Saints are at 8-8. By the way, Sean Payton should get a lot of Coach of the Year votes just for the fact that he had to go through 4 quarterbacks this year and all the injuries that they had. But if they win and the 49ers lose, the 49ers are out. Philadelphia and New Orleans goes into the playoffs. If the 49ers can beat the Rams and have Atlanta, or if Atlanta beats New Orleans this weekend with Matt Ryan, probably his last game as a Falcon, so you would think he'd want to go out big time on that. If New Orleans loses, they're out. The 49ers and Eagles are in. San Francisco loses and New Orleans wins, then the 49ers are out. That's basically it in the NFC. In the AFC, if the Ravens win and the Chargers lose, that could eliminate the Chargers because Baltimore has the head-to-head over the Chargers. And if the Steelers win, then there's a whole nother scenario. They need about 4 different things to happen. They have to beat Baltimore. If they beat Baltimore, they'll eliminate Baltimore. They lose the tiebreaker to the Raiders and the Chargers, so they need both of them to not end in a tie. Whoever loses, if Pittsburgh wins, will get into the playoffs. You get all that, Charlie?
Yeah. If the black and white domino falls, then everything goes in a circle.
Right.
I don't think that even in their wildest imaginations that the NFL could have thought that it was going to come down and be this wild at the end.
They can't be that smart.
Well, we know they're not. We know they're not. And it's crazy. Again, with the situation with the Eagles and the 49ers, and some of those things, we know there's going to have to be a few tweaks like that, but that's okay. I mean, I love being in the final week of the season and having this much up in the air, because that's what makes sports fun. I've always hated it, like when you got to the final week of the season and everything was so already decided that the games weren't any fun. I mean, when I have to go watch a college basketball game to be excited on the final week of the NFL, that's tragic. And
no doubt.
And I don't have to do that this week. I'm going to be glued to multiple TVs.
Definitely the 17-game season has helped the NFL, kept a lot of markets in the scenario. All right, we talk about the AFC here, so let me run through this again. I want to be clear about this because we do have the lines to go through. If the Chargers lose and the Ravens win, the Chargers will be out. The Vegas will be in, and it'll be the Ravens that are in as the number 7 seed as well too. So that's the scenario that happens right there. Let me see here. Yeah, that's correct. And then Pittsburgh has to win. They have to have Jacksonville beat the Colts, and then they have to not have the Vegas and the Chargers end up in a tie. And that's the only thing that will hurt them because those Detroit Lions have surely played a part this year in a lot of games this year. Even though Charlie has given me a bad time on the Detroit Lions, I get one more opportunity in the regular season to bring up the Detroit Lions, who are in the division with my Bears. But the fact is that the Detroit Lions have a lot to do with the Pittsburgh Steelers' fate this weekend. And so I just wanted to bring the Detroit Lions and Dan Campbell back into the scenario.
You don't know this, but one of my best friends, Pam, is a diehard. She's originally from Michigan, and she lives up in Montana now, and she is a diehard Lions fan, and I have been on her all season long, and and she is just so thrilled with every little success that they've had. So I'm glad for her. I'm not glad for you because you've just rubbed my nose in it. But yeah, it's ironic that the Lions are playing into all of this and having some effect on the playoffs.
Vasuvada Party Charlie O here. The 2-year anniversary of the Make the Money and Run show. We're having a little bit of fun. We'll break down all the NFL football on the Friday football show tomorrow at 1 Eastern, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Of course, you can download and subscribe. Let me just run through the lines here real quick of the games that are important. Saturday, Kansas City, 10.5, 44.5 at Denver, 4:30 Eastern in that game. The Eagles and Cowboys, we don't have a line on the Eagles and Cowboys game. I think I saw that. Yeah, no line.
ESPN is showing Dallas minus 4.5 with an over and under of 43. I think that's okay. Caesars.
I think that game doesn't have a lot of meaning except for seeding for the Philadelphia Eagles. Depending on where they'll go, they'll stay ahead of New Orleans because they beat the Saints earlier in the year, but they lost to the 49ers. But that 3-team tie-breaking format is the one that you got to look out for from the NFC standpoint. All right, the Indianapolis Colts are 16-point favorites at Jacksonville, 44 the total there. Tampa Bay still playing for a number 2 seed. They're 8 against Carolina, 41.5. Tennessee, 10.5 at Houston. Houston beat them in Tennessee earlier in the year, so don't think that that's a walkover for the Titans. 43 the total there. Baltimore, 6-point favorite over the Steelers, 41.5. John Harbaugh went for 2 in the game earlier this season against Pittsburgh. Didn't get it. They lost. If they had gone to overtime, who knows? Maybe they would have won and they wouldn't be in this situation. The Bengals minus Joe Burrow and Joe Mixon, probably a few other players too. They're basically locked into the 3 seed. Unless Buffalo wins and they lose. They're 6-point underdogs to a Baker Mayfield-less Cleveland Browns. A lot of running in that game, 37.5. The Patriots and Dolphins, minus 7 and 40, as we said. The Bills are 16-41 over the Jets. The big one for the Saints and Falcons. The Saints are a 4.5-point favorite at Atlanta, 40 the total. Arizona is pretty much locked in. The 49ers are 4.5-point underdog at 44.5. Visiting the Rams, who they've dominated the last 3 years, including the Monday night game earlier. And then the Chargers are a 3-point favorite at Vegas, 49.5. The Chargers beat the Raiders on Monday Night Football way back early in the year, like week 5 in Los Angeles. They beat them up pretty good. And so they go in as a 3-point favorite on the Raiders this weekend, who came up with a big win against the Colts last weekend. So there you go, Charlie. There's the scenario that we have for that. We'll have a full breakdown of that tomorrow, but just give me early thoughts as we think about this going into the Friday football show.
I am a little surprised about the Chargers going in as a 3-point favorite in Vegas. I don't know. Have they watched the Chargers play? I mean, they're a team to me that's on the decline. I'm surprised.
They're inconsistent. I'll give you that, because they started off hot and they were right there. And I don't know what's going on with the Chargers from the standpoint of, I have them picked to maybe even win the AFC West last week. They played the Broncos. They blew them out after losing to Houston in Houston. They blew out a very depleted Denver Bronco team last week, 34-13. And so they're in this situation. They and the Raiders are in this. I mean, they could really screw everybody up if they really did just kneel and play to a 0-0 tie. I know it's not going to happen that way. There's probably incentives and everything.
But I love that. I love that scenario. I mean, we know it's not going to happen, but just the thought of that would be a.
Can you imagine?
If you haven't heard that, folks, find some place to read about it because it's crazy.
Can you imagine Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth on Sunday Night Football, watching them kneel the whole time and what they would say and how they would go about it? Chris would lose his mind.
Chris Collinsworth would probably jump out the window of the press box. It would be the last time we'd ever hear him do a game.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Anyway, the fact is that
I think the 49ers Rams game will be a good one because they both have things on the line. The big question there for the 49ers, who's going to be a quarterback? We know Jimmy G threw yesterday on the sidelines. He did say that his thumb hurt like F every time he threw. We did see Trey Lance last week, who played pretty well. We saw moments of why they drafted him. Can he, if he has to go, can he stand up against that Rams defense? I have questions about that. So I think a lot depends there on who's a quarterback. Other games that I'm looking at, that Steelers Ravens game, man, I just do not believe in the Steelers. But you know what? I don't believe in the Ravens either. So I don't know how to handicap that game.
Well, I mean, the way it came out to me, the last time they played, Lamar Jackson got hurt, and I think was it the Steelers game that he got hurt? I can't remember what game he got hurt, but he hasn't played well. Tyrone Huntley played last week. They played better last week when they beat up on they lost to the Rams last weekend at home with Tyrone Huntley, a quarterback that allowed the Rams to win the division of the NFC West there. They still have a chance to lose the 2 spot to the 3 spot to the Buccaneers if they lose to the 49ers and Tampa Bay wins over the Carolina Panthers, who gave the Saints a tough game last week, by the way, even with Sam Darnold, no McCaffrey. This Chuba Hubbard running for Carolina is a beast, and they could give Tampa Bay some problems here if they can control the clock. And we know Sam Darnold has a history with the Patriots being with the Jets, so it might not go well for them from that standpoint. But and Matt Rule thinking that he might be back next year might be another question. But coming in this week, the 49ers and Rams, that is one of the big games. In fact, I'm looking at it. Both networks will have a doubleheader, so I'm looking at it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games, unheard of, all at 1:25 Pacific time, 4:25 on the East, 3 on Fox, 3 on CBS. Of course, it's a doubleheader. And then the Chargers and Raiders, the NBC game on Sunday night. They like to have win and in scenarios for their Sunday night games. Of course, no Monday night game. And then the wild cards start the following week. But the 49ers, Rams, obviously very interesting. The Saints and Falcons, very interesting. The Bills, Jets, Patriots, Dolphins, very interesting in terms of the AFC East versus a road game. In fact, whoever loses that game will end up having to go visit the other team in New England and Buffalo, because they'll probably end up 4-5 unless Cincinnati loses and Buffalo and New England get in and win. Whoever wins that game, they might have a shot at the 3rd seed. So that's the only scenario that I see. In fact, when we come back from the break, I'll tell you if that's the case or not. This is the 2-year anniversary show of the Make the Money and Run podcast for Thursday, January 6th, 2022. Vasu Vatapati, Charlie O. Can't forget Casey Freelove. He started with us. Hopefully he's doing well. Intern Nick Robinson back in school at Oregon. He'll join us tomorrow for the Friday football show. I'm attempting at a couple of guests tomorrow as well, too. So we'll see if that pans out. But right now, lots to talk about in the NFL. But we'll do all that tomorrow on the Friday football show. When we come back, we'll talk a little NBA. We'll talk a little college basketball as the conference play has started. The new year started, so that means conference play in college basketball. The NBA, the Warriors had a tough one last night, but they're still doing fine. Phoenix is doing fine. The Bulls have now overtaken the Nets in first place of the Eastern Conference. We'll get to all that and more on the Make the Money and Run 2-year anniversary show. Charlie O, Vasu Vatapati here with you. We'll be back in 30 seconds. Welcome back to the Make the Money and Run podcast for January 6, 2022. Charlie O, Vasu Vadaparty here with you, our 2-year anniversary show. Thanks to everybody for following us and supporting us. 2 years in the books. Check us out every Thursdays and Fridays. Don't forget our social media selections. Haven't had a chance to tell you about that. 6 Eastern every day, 3 times on Saturday, 2 times on Sunday as we get through the NFL regular season. College basketball getting in full swing with conference play. Of course, the NBA approaching the halfway mark as well, too. We're here sponsored by the Britannia Arms of Capitola, 10 years on the shores of Capitola Village, and in the heart of Silicon Valley, the Britannia Arms of Cupertino. And don't forget Super Draft Pro, best daily fantasy sports site. Download the app from any device or log in at superdraftpro.com/VPartySports. All right, Charlie, 2 years. We're in to our scenario. Happy anniversary again to you as we start 2022. We are getting older. We see how things go. We're a little more crass. We're a lot less worried about what people think. And so it works out well.
Is crass another word for cranky?
Sure. I don't have my thesaurus in front of me, but sure. We'll go with that. I got no problem with that. All right, let's talk a little NBA here as we get to the near the midway point. I don't want to really say the midway point. Still got about 10 games. Actually, that's not true. 35 games. We're about 6 or 7 games away from the halfway point. The Chicago Bulls are 25-10. They lead the Eastern Conference by 2 games in the loss column over the Nets, 5 games over the Bucks in the loss column, who had their own issues last night in Toronto. Philadelphia came back. If you had Philadelphia minus 8.5 and 9.5, and you were down 10 in the third quarter, you're lucky you had Orlando because they ended up covering that game. I had them at minus 9.5, and it went down to 8.5, but they ended up winning by 10. So you got yourself a lucky cover there. And then if you had the Warriors, thinking the Warriors were the game that we're going to go, that wasn't so good there. They did not shoot well. Cleveland 21-17, the Raptors 18-17, the Hornets 20-19, Washington 19-19. They lost to the Rockets last night on a game winner by Kevin Porter Jr. Celtics under 500 and 10th at 18-20. In the West, Golden State is 29-8, tied with Phoenix, both at 29-8. Utah got a big victory last night at Denver, 28-10. They didn't have Gobert last night, but boy, they look awfully good. They're only 2 games back of the Suns and the Warriors. Memphis has turned it on. They're 25-14, Charlie. How about that? And then the Dallas Mavericks 20-18, Lakers 20-19, Clippers 19-19, Denver 18-18, Minnesota, San Antonio under 500, 18-20, San Antonio in the 10th spot, 15-22. All right, let's start with the West here. We live out west. We see the Warriors every day. The Phoenix Suns are on TV quite a bit as well, too. They've had their share of – both teams have had their share of injuries. Both teams have had their share of COVID. Monty Williams is in COVID protocol. I think he came back and coached last night. But they're both 29-8. And here's the Utah Jazz. Played a great game against Denver. They were giving it up a little bit with no Rudy Gobert in the middle. But 28-10 for the Utah Jazz. Those are the 3 best teams in basketball right now.
Yeah, and again, we always talk about the Jazz playing in obscurity because they're in Salt Lake. They're in the Central Time Zone. So it's like basketball hell because, nobody covers them. And all of a sudden people go, really? Utah Jazz 28-10? How's that possible? I watched them the other night against the Warriors, and man, they just play good basketball. Joe Ingles is maybe one of the most underrated guys in all of the NBA. He's not flashy, he's not exciting, but he's consistent. And I hate him. He became available, or they thought he was going to become available a couple of seasons ago. And there was a little talk about Sacramento going after him. And I wanted them to get him so badly because he's the kind of player that just will solidify a lineup. And he's just there. He's just there. And their Bogdanovich is a really good player. Gobert frustrates me because some nights he's there, some nights he's not. But when he's on, he is so on. Donovan Mitchell, the best player in the NBA that nobody knows about. They are a good, solid team. They've got a great coach. These guys are guys to watch. Are they going to win the NBA championship? I don't think so. The Warriors and you got the Warriors, and you've got Brooklyn, you've got the Bulls right now going on, but they're going to be a factor in the playoffs. And if you get a chance to watch them, there'll always be a late game on the double headers. But if you get a chance to watch them and you're back east, at least watch the first half, because they're a good basketball team.
No doubt about it. Vatsy Vatapari, Charlie O here on the Make the Money and Run podcast, the 2-year anniversary show. Britannia Arms of Capitola, Britannia Arms of Cupertino. Our sponsors, don't forget Super Draft Pro as well, too. All right, let's continue on in the West. How about these Memphis Grizzlies? Again, they're a team that nobody knows about. They're very physical. John Morant is playing as well as anybody right now. Jaren Jackson Jr. is back for them. I forgot their coach's name. That's how much people watch them. Taylor something is his name, and I forgot his name. Taylor Jenkins is his name. The Memphis coach has done wonders with that team. They're in the 4th seed. Their biggest problem right now is that they're looking up at Utah, Phoenix, and Golden State. Otherwise, they are right there amongst everybody. By the way, those that don't remember, I want to say 2 Thursdays ago, the Memphis Grizzlies went into actually early in the year, they went into Golden State and beat them early in the year, and then they played them tough again in the play-in game last year. I'm looking at 25-14, Charlie, in the West. If I plop that into the East, the same number of wins as the Bulls in first. They probably would be behind the Nets. They would be ahead of the Milwaukee Bucks because they have less losses, and behind the Nets in terms of percentage. So they'd be 3rd in the East behind Chicago and Brooklyn. And if I was a Memphis Grizzlies, and Memphis, by the way, is in Tennessee. I think that's more East than it is West anyway. And I don't know why they're in the East, why they're not in the East to begin with. But I would think that Brooklyn and Chicago would be an easier route to jump for the Memphis Grizzlies than the Utah, Phoenix, Golden State teams that they have to face to jump there. I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, yeah, and by the way, they are on the East because they're on the east side of the Mississippi River. Okay, right. So I don't care how you cut it, that's the East. But we all know that these differentiating lines are crazy. So that's what you have to do. But the Grizzlies, this is a team that years ago developed a banging defensive physical style, and they have maintained that through multiple coaches. It's just something that has become part of a DNA of this team, and they've maintained that. John Morant was out, now he's back, and Ja just leads that. Kendrick Perkins yesterday was on the ESPN NBA show, and he calls him the gangsta, because he just gets out there and he not only gives you the offense, but he gives you just brutal defense. And they're just a physical team, and you better not come out there and just think you're going to finesse that team. If you don't come out and don't come out there and be prepared to play physical basketball, they're just going to bump you right off the court. So they are a tough-minded basketball team, and fun to watch, maddening to watch sometimes, but fun to watch.
The Memphis Grizzlies, their 2 wins this week were both on the road on back-to-back nights. They drubbed the Brooklyn Nets on Monday night as a 6-point underdog. They were a 3-point underdog to the Cavaliers on Tuesday. I had both those nights, so that's why I remember where they were. But the Memphis Grizzlies have done well by me this year, and I think I'll continue to stay with them. Let's talk about the number 4 seed in the East before we wrap up the NBA. The Miami Heat, they lose Jimmy Butler 2 nights ago. They had a big lead on the Trailblazers last night, who were without Lillard and McCollum still. Give Portland credit, they came back, made it a tight game, and then Miami ended up blowing them out late in the year. Miami's in 4th, Philadelphia's in 5th. We talked about Philadelphia and Orlando last night. Cleveland has yet to play. We'll give you the lines in a second for the Thursday slate going into this weekend. But the Miami Heat, to me, are very intriguing from the standpoint of they've got a lot of injuries, and Jimmy Butler is their heart and soul of that team, even though they've got other guys on that team that can score with Adebayo in center, and they've got 3-point shooters. Kyle Lowry is there as well, too. By the way, did you see how he got ejected the other day? That was a terrible ejection the other day.
Yes.
Oh, my God. Anyway, the NBA, a little more sensitive than I thought they were. I thought these referees were not that sensitive. Could have cost him the game. Did not cost him the game.
Sensitive everywhere right now. The quick tee, they'd gotten away from that, and they're back to the quick tees again. League's got to step in.
Yeah, they do. Anyway, so give me your take on the Miami Heat. Milwaukee Bucks right above them, half a game ahead, both with 15 losses. But those two teams are very intriguing to me in the East with Miami Heat and Milwaukee Bucks, Charlie.
Well, the Heat are well coached and well managed. And you're right. Jimmy Butler, even though at this point in time in his career is not spectacular, he is the heart and soul of that team. And they need him out there because he leads them. And the other thing that he does is when he comes back out on the court, it's very interesting. When he goes to the bench, they tend to slide back a little bit. But when he comes back out on the court, they accelerate. I saw them the other night when they played the Kings, and it was very interesting. He'd go out, and the Kings would start to make a run back. He'd come back out on the court. Boom, here they come. So they need him, and they need him healthy. But I think they're, Spoelstra may be one of the most underrated coaches in the NBA. I think everybody go, oh, well, yeah, he kind of got the job and was anointed. You don't keep that job that long just because you were anointed. He's a good coach. And I think they're building. Tyler Hero is a good player, good shooter. They've got a lot of things going for them. Philadelphia, I want to come to them for just a second. Philadelphia is at 21-16. They're in 5th place. They have got to do something.
Right.
And what they've got to do is they've got to move Ben Simmons, because you've got an all-star player right now that you've got sitting in a box. And you cannot, I mean, I know they're trying to make a statement. And the statement is, you are not going to dictate to us what we're going to do. Well, hello, Philadelphia.
They've done that, but now it's time to move on and get some help for the team.
Plus the fact, Vasu, it's a different era.
Mm-hmm.
This is not baseball with the reserve clause. Okay, it's a different era, and players in some ways do dictate what happens. And they need players right now. And they are missing an all-star player. They can get an all-star player back for him, probably plus picks. And they are going to be mired where they are or fall if they don't get something back for him now. And Morey has got to get his head on and do something. If I were a fan in Philadelphia right now, I'd be boycotting the games because you're hurting your team. And, Joel Embiid's got to be losing his mind.
Yeah.
He's got to be losing his mind because
he played great in the fourth quarter last night. That helped them get to that victory. If I was a Philadelphia fan, I would call a Houston fan right now and figure out how to deal with Daryl Morey, because they're a lot less patient in Philadelphia than they are in Houston. And I know Houston's not very good, but he didn't exactly leave the cupboard full when he was exited out of Houston to go to Philadelphia. And I got a bad feeling this is going to be the same way that's going to happen for Philadelphia going forward with the 76ers as well too. All right, that's going to do it for the NBA. Let me give you the little lines here for the day. 3 of the 4 games are on the board. Don't forget our social media selections. 6:00 every day. We'll have the 4th game on there. The Celtics and Knicks do not have a line on my site. ESPN has them at -1.5. Boston with Boston 1.5 and the total at 207. They're on the road at the Knicks. ESPN has the Knicks at a 55% win clip, but they're not on my board. The important one, where I actually make my wagers on, Golden State 2.5 at 212 at New Orleans after their loss last night. Usually when they have a bad game against a team that they should beat, like yesterday where they shot like 34% at Dallas, look out New Orleans, who doesn't play any defense tonight.
I'm in on that game right now. I can tell you right now I'm in on that game.
The Detroit Pistons at the Memphis Grizzlies. Look out Detroit. No Jeremy Grant. All their guys are injured as well too. 13 for the Memphis Grizzlies. 218. 13 might not be enough for the Detroit Pistons going in. And then the final game, the Clippers are a 10.5 point underdog. 220.5 to the Phoenix Suns, who we just told you are tied with the Warriors at 29-8. The Clippers trying to get their pieces in place here if they even want a chance to make a run. Speaking of people being driven crazy, if you watch the Clippers games and all those injuries that are there and all the money that they put out there, poor Steve Ballmer. I mean, whatever hair he's got left sitting on the sidelines, he's just going, he's got to be going absolutely ballistic. I didn't pay for this. This is not what I've got going on and all this other stuff. And I'm like, and I'm just watching them, and there are games that I thought that they should have won. They got blown out by Minnesota earlier in the week, and I don't know how else we can rate the Clippers until they get Paul George back, I guess.
But there's a mistake that they made there, Vasu, and it's a mistake that I'm going to continue to rant about in all sports. You cannot give long-term contracts to aging players and think that that is going to win you championships. When you give players who are aging those long-term big dollar contracts, they're going to hit a spot in that contract where injuries are going to start to take their toll, and you can't buy a contract with an aging player and expect that as they peak and they start to come down, that's going to buy you a championship. And that's what's happening to them. So to me, it's not a surprise.
Last 3 minutes of the show here before we get out of here. We're going to get out of here a little early with some NCAA college basketball. Actually, a very big game coming up in about 15 minutes. I'll tell you right now, USF Dons are 13-1. They're playing everybody's sweethearts from a couple of years ago, Loyola Chicago, at 11 o'clock. They're in a tournament, the Southland Conference men's basketball tip. Actually, that's not the one they're in. They are in Salt Lake City, Utah, playing an 11 o'clock Pacific time game. It's actually a really good game. It's Loyola Chicago, USF. I wish it was on TV somewhere. Loyola Chicago, a 3-point favorite against USF. 61% says ESPN, but I like the Dons at +3 in that game as well. So in the other games, some of the big games tonight, FS1 will have a triple header going, including the game I'll be at Berkeley tonight, Ohio State at Indiana. Indiana, 3.5-point favorite, 140 in the Big Ten. The other Big Ten game, 11 for Illinois over Maryland, 140.5. And that line, both those games at 7 o'clock Eastern. As I scroll down here and look at some of the 8 o'clocks and 9 o'clocks, there is Iowa, Wisconsin. That'll be a pretty good game. Wisconsin, 3 and 146.5. All Wisconsin did was go into Purdue and beat them on the road on Monday night. Pacific BYU for us out here, 17 for BYU against UOP. Cincinnati, 2.5 against SMU is very good. Colorado in the Pac-12, -1.5, 129.5. Washington, a 9.5-point underdog, 148.5 at Utah. And then USC, California, 11 o'clock Eastern. Tonight, 8 o'clock on the West Coast, Fox Sports 1, USC number 7 in the country, 5 and 128. Long Beach State at number 5, UCLA, 26 for UCLA, 143. And the rest are all the write-ins. Again, social media selections, 6 o'clock Eastern. Give me a quick take on what you heard of what I just said of the NCAA, Charlie.
This is the time of year where the NCAA gets interesting. I'm still trying to figure out that Loyola Chicago USF game at 11 o'clock. Is that a tournament?
Yeah, it's a tournament. They're playing in Utah. I think that's why they're playing in Utah. It probably has to do with the Southern Utah Lifetime Activities Center in Salt Lake City, Utah. That's not where the Utah Utes are playing, are they? They're on the road, I think. No, they're at home tonight. Maybe it's a doubleheader of some kind. But anyway, 11 o'clock in the morning, I'll take it. I like watching USF play. Loyola Chicago, obviously the darlings, 13-1 for the Dons in the WCC, a good WCC conference, and Loyola Chicago. But the Big Ten dominates.
Oh, yeah, Big Ten. I'm interested in that Ohio State-Indiana game. I'm loving the improvement in Indiana. Who thought a coaching change there would make that much improvement in one season? And I'm really impressed with what's going on there. Wisconsin, always a good watch. They've not been able to get over the hump and win a national championship, but maybe one of the most consistent programs in all of Division I basketball. Tremendous program there. I think that Cincinnati SMU game will be a good one to watch tonight as well.
The American Conference with the University of Houston in that conference as well, too. All right, that's going to do it for us. We're here every Thursdays and Fridays, 1 o'clock Eastern, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter Live. Download and subscribe if you missed any of the live broadcasts. Don't forget the Friday football show tomorrow at 1 o'clock Eastern. Complete breakdown of Week 18 of the NFL. 17-game season will get you set up for the playoffs the following week as well, too. And don't forget our social media selections, 6 o'clock Eastern every day, Monday through Friday, 3 times on Saturday, twice on Saturday. Again, thanks to the Britannia Arms of Capitola and Cupertino and Super Draft Pro. Download the app and log in. Best fantasy sports site there is right now as well, too. All right, that's going to do it. Once again to Charlie and Casey and Nick, happy anniversary. 2 years in the books for the Make the Money and Run podcast. Let's make year 3 great. We got a lot of changes and a lot of upcoming improvements for the show that we're going to get to, and we'll tell you as we go on, but stay in touch with us on social media as well, too. Once again, Charlie, happy anniversary.
Same to you, Vasu.
All right, that'll do it for the Thursday edition of the Make the Money and Run podcast. Friday football show tomorrow at 1 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock on the West Coast, live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Thanks again to everybody for supporting us for these last 2 years. Thanks for everybody watching. If you missed the Chris Myers interview earlier, you can download and subscribe to that as well, too. For Charlie O, I'm Vasi Vadaparty, intern Nick as well on assignment, and, of course, Casey Freelove on the anniversary show. Can't forget about him. Take care, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow at 1 o'clock for the Friday football show and the Make the Money and Run podcast for today. Take care.